Dear participants of the conference, greetings on behalf of Slovenia Forest Service. Thank you for the invitation to the conference and honor to have the first presentation. My task today, as it was said already, is to present you the Slovenian experience with ice break in our forest, which happened 7 years ago. The presentation content will look like I will first say something about ice storm or ice break or glaze or however you call it. Then a little bit about consequential damages. Then about how it looked at our response and recovery. And a little bit about lessons learned. And at the end, a few words about transnational collaboration. I would like to first show some data with which you can compare normal forest management with such one which appears after some damages. And normally we were cutting before this ice glaze some million cubic meters in the forests which cover 60% of our land. We have half conifers, half broadleaf trees, and which is what is very important is that private forests have a share of 75%, and we have many forest owners, more than 400,000. If watching the recipe, how you get this ice glaze, don't wish it, but here is the recipe, how it comes to it. It has to be some special meteorological situation. You have to have few days of freezing weather, which is freezing also the trees and the ground and everything. And over that one, over 1,000 meters of altitude comes some warmer air, which is humid. It starts to snow or rain. But this rain, when it touches the ground or the trees, it freezes. And the more days it lasts, the thicker is that layer of the skin, which is made of frozen water. In Slovenia, ice break is an occasional natural disaster. It comes every now and then. In medium strength occurs every few years, but a strong one once in several decades. Here we have a map. Dark green is the color where we can expect this stuff more or less in severe circumstances every decade or something like that. In the rest parts of the country, it's not so common. Like you can see on the right side, in last 100 years, we had such events, but never it was exceeding 1 million cubic meters. But in 2014, we had really a major one, which was estimated to 9.3 million cubic meters. So between 30th of January and 10th of February, so 11 days, it was raining, it was freezing there on the ground and this and that. Some half of Slovene forests were damaged. If I try to say how much broadleaves and conifers, it was two-thirds of broadleaves and one-third of conifers. We had 15,000 kilometers of blocked forest roads, and in average, it fell 15 cubic meters per hectare, which is a little. But 14,000 hectares needed re-establishment of the forest, because everything fell down more or less. Like we have in Slovenian forest management, we don't plant everything what is totally broken, but we ask nature to do it in 95%, and 5% we are planting artificially. Looking financially, this damage was more than 200 million euros of the size. And watching the whole damage which ice sleet made to Slovenia, it was estimated to additional 200 million mostly in electrician and phone lines area. We managed to remove in Slovenia 75% of these woods. Mostly what it was left in the forest was on slope terrains, the broadleaf trees, and the restoration completed with planting this year in spring. A little bit, if analyzing our response, I have to emphasize that we had quite good results in response on disturbance. What I think we did really well is how to estimate the volume and widespread of the event. We have done some action plan with priorities. So when we started to do something in the forest, it was first to make accesses to the villages, to infrastructure, first to take conifers, valuable timber, first to solve the situation in tourist places, etc. If you want to do it all at once, you will lose the game, and that's what we knew already in the beginning. According to the Slovenian forest law, we made a complete response plan with financial consequences within 2 months after the event. And according to that plan, the state provided from the state budget the money to solve the situation in the next year. What is really important in such situation, to our opinion, is that one institution, in this case it was Slovenia Forest Service, took the overall lead to the whole process of coordination and media communication. In first year, we made 10 press releases, 6 press conferences, 200 media interviews and expert articles, etc., etc. I think we really made it well, not only with media, but also with owners, politicians, NGOs, and so on. Of course, always you can find some negative features of response, but those are the ones to be repaired in the next such occasion. Not always it's so that what is urgent is also important, so you really have to know what you will do, because you have limited stuff, limited market, limited, everything is limited, only the disaster is kind of unlimited. So you have to think a lot what you will do first and what is the most important and most urgent. This wasn't the end of the catastrophe, because always when you have, like we saw before in the survey, always when you have spruce, you have also trouble with bark beetle, and those they of course appeared. The previous record in Slovenia in 100 years, it was less than 1 million of cubic meters, but in following years after the ice sleet, we came to the numbers of 2 million and so on. If we summarize it all, it was 9 million of cubic meters, and if you remember, ice sleet took 9 million plus this 9 million in addition, and of course some additional financial damage. You can ask, of course, yourself, is it a lot, is it too much, or how? But we think this 9 million is a reasonable number. It have gone to more tens of millions of cubic meters easily. We didn't have good luck all the time, but it appeared also a windbreak in December 2017. Due climate changes, it's happening many things in the forest like every elsewhere in the world. And in 2017, we again had one record windbreak, which took about 3 million cubic meters. And this one we solved additionally. And of course, it was making the bark beetle stronger at that time. If I summarize all the 3 catastrophes I mentioned, 65% of the Slovenian forests were affected in these last 7 years. Financially, the damage was more than 400 million euros. And we had to renew 30,000 hectares. Again, like I said before, 5 to 6% we are renewing by planting with 23 different tree species. The other 95% has had to do the nature and is doing and will do still in the future. If I watch a little bit the cost effectiveness of recovery and what damage was prevented, there are always two ways. Either it goes spontaneously, let's say in amateur way of the things can go by themselves, or it can go, or it can go smartly or professionally guided. I guess for all of us, this second system is much better, much more under control, and with lower costs, with better possibilities to succeed, and so on. Also, from this side, from the right side, from professional way of guiding the staff, we can collect useful experience for related cases in future events. We have learned many lessons which are integrated into prevention and preparedness, and one of totally the basic, at least for us in Slovenia, it's so that if you want in long term to prevent bigger disasters, at least partly, you have to have mixed forest of habitat adapted tree species and natural regeneration as the system of forest management. And if in last decades they were teaching us also in the school and every elsewhere that highest timber quality is the first stuff, it's not anymore so. I think in the future, due to climate change and so on, the stability of the trees and the stands and genetical diversity are at least of the same importance. What is also very important that each state is not taking care of their forestry administration only at emergency cases, but this one has to be established and has to have proper condition already in peaceful times. Otherwise, when the catastrophe comes, you are on amateur way of acting the stuff. Of course, you can never be 100% ready for any disaster, but if you have a proper forestry administration in peaceful time, you have some possibilities to have good luck, or you can solve the system not only by good luck, but you have some knowledge, some stuff, and things like that to do it like it should be done. For the end, I would like to emphasize that what was extremely important also to us in Slovenia, and I think with that one we had even better results, is that 1 month after I slid in Slovenia came Dr. Christoph Hartebrod from Freiburg, Germany, and he was telling us what kind of experiences the German foresters had when solving their big troubles with windbreaks in the past. And not only that, we were invited 2 months after our event to Freiburg, where we saw in practice how Germans were doing their work on windbreaks. This was all very, very, very good for us. We were changing a little bit our way of speaking to media, to politicians and this and that. And if you don't have them behind you, your actions are probably not so successful. What we have learned from these two things is maybe not totally 100% forestry stuff, but mostly we learned because politicians are, always ready to give some subsidies, some measures, some changes of laws and things like that. We saw exactly what was and what wasn't effective in German case, how to avoid bottlenecks in the response of disturbances, how to work with media, with politicians, what kind of messages to give to them, because this is all long-term process and they are all expecting in 10 days it will be everything solved and this and that. And what the last but not the least, how to work better with employees. Those are also in trouble in such situation, and more or less we often forget them. As the last thought, I would like to say that Slovenia has been helped, like I said, by international expertise in forest disasters. We are convinced that such help could be useful to many other countries, and that with our experience, Slovenian foresters are also able to successfully contribute to European Forest Risks Facility. Thank you very much for your attention, and maybe more if you have some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Damian, for an excellent presentation. Really opening the topic for our workshop today in an excellent way, because you address so many really relevant aspects. And I think it's really so crucial that to see that there's one thing that's the immediate situation once a disturbance hits, but then there's so many decisions needed afterwards. And then you said that in the beginning you had much more damage in broadleaf trees, but then with the consequence of the bark beetle outbreak later on, in the end, it was then again the spruce being much more affected than in total. But I also thought that the graph that you showed with the different types of needed actions, what is most urgent and what is most important, that's really something where your experience showed us very, very clearly that you have to take choices, and these choices have quite some implication on the further development of the situation and the recovery and the future risks as well. We have the first question here. Out of your experience, what are the forest management options to better prepare the forest for ice breaks? Can we prepare for the forest for ice breaks?
Ice break is such a unspecific damage in the forest. If the layer of the ice is thin, then you can expect more damage in the trees which are not symmetrically built. So broadleaf trees are the ones which are the first target. But when it gets thicker, or when you get still extra wind to it, not a single tree can survive it. But of course, if you have mixed stands with many different tree species, you have much bigger chances that something is surviving. And that's what I think the target of forest management.
Robert Master was asking, also both of the colleagues have thanked for a very interesting presentation, obviously, but he had another question. If you could elaborate a bit how you worked during those disaster periods with the forest owners. So what was the role of the forest owners, and was there any compensation for the loss that they had? And then finally also, what was the role, was an active role of the forest industry in this process?
Yes, it was lots of work in all areas. If I would like to describe my working day, then it was some 300 mails, some 50 to 70 phone calls, and so some meetings and so on. Like you said, we have, like I said in presentation, we have 400,000 forest owners. You cannot address each one individually, but we had some meetings, press releases and things like that, and articles in newspapers. But on the other hand, we have also 400 people in our company working outside every day with them, and these are individual talks which are also very important with them. So yes, I have to say we provided through the state budget money, and through the measures which state delivered them, the money they needed for restoration. Plus they got some tax reductions, at least those which were completely with destroyed forest. So everything happened at once, and I guess they were happy. And it's not happy and unhappy. In emergency case, they got plans from the state, from Slovenia Forest Service. We helped them to provide the working groups. We helped a little bit with selling the woods. We helped them, we provided all the plants, what they needed for restoration and things like that. So I think we did some work, but of course, forest owners would also say, yeah, we need it. We would like to get still something, this and that extra, which you cannot do, I mean, in such cases.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So then we had another question from Shane Flanagan, and I should actually have said that it would be nice if you would also put your affiliation into the question. So please, all of you, you're very welcome to ask more questions. It would be nice if you would also put in from what institutions you are coming. That would be helpful. We see already some results growing here in the back as well. But we have time for some more questions. So Shane Flanagan was asking, what was the public reaction to the ice storm, and how did you react to that?
To us, it appeared as a first stuff as a trouble. We have forbidden access to the forest for 10 days because, you know, people like to recreate themselves in the forest, to go to walk with the dog or to just to run and so. And that is the most dangerous stuff. And we managed to do it so that really few people went to the forest, at least for the time period when it was lasting for these 11 days. Otherwise, people were astonished, people were afraid. Along the highways, along the main highway from the capital to the coast, it fell enormous amount of wood, and people were afraid, is this kind of the end of the world or whatever. And all the time they were asking when we will see again such old forests and this and that. All the time we were listening to Mr. Hartebrodt advice, say to them, which was say to them, we know what we are doing, it will last a long time, but we know what is the goal and we will manage to reach it. I mean, it will take years to restore it, and be patient. You cannot reestablish an old forest in a few minutes. And this was the basis. Otherwise, what is good, they were afraid. Everybody, owners and non-owners, were afraid what will happen with the forest. And this helped us also with the politicians to get the additional money, which went to the forest owners, which went to the plants, and which went to all the actions. Also, many companies were offering, I don't know, team building. We will come there and we will help you to plant the trees. And it was a big media action as well.
Mm-hmm. You stressed already the dynamics after the initial damage that you had then this bark beetle outbreak. And there was a question now from Mr. Shofikul Islam. I'm sorry for the wrong pronunciation, but I don't know how to pronounce that. To ask a bit more about how to remedy the bark beetle outbreak problem. So my twist on this question would be, you said that you had actually quite a good perception of what is important to do first and what comes next. But if you now look back 7 years ago, were there things that you would now have done differently in the response? Could there be any measures you could have taken to, for example, further reduce the consecutive bark beetle outbreak? So you were quite aware that there was quite some spruce was damaged. There would have been any measures that you could have taken if you would have been already having experience earlier to somehow mitigate the consecutive effects?
From the very beginning, we said to people, the disaster you see now after ice sleet is not a complete one. It will still come at least 50% of this one additionally in the form of bark beetle attack. This one we knew, and we said to people honestly, the faster we will do the salvation of, I mean, the cutting and removing the spruce away, the smaller will be the next damage. Of this one, we were aware. What we maybe didn't do fast enough is to call international help in terms of harvesters and things like that. Those we didn't have enough. People were thinking, yeah, better maybe we do it all alone with our labor and this and that, but that was maybe a wrong step, which was repaired quite early, but those first kind of months are very important because this happened in February. Outbreak of bark beetle you get in Slovenia normally in second half of April, beginning of May. And that time we should have used a little bit more with more intensive work in some cases. That I would repair immediately, if possible, if it would have been possible. Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah, but that's a very, very good point to stress here, that you say that international support would have been really helping you to mitigate the future secondary impact. And I think we have seen in the, unfortunately, since 2014, we've had so many quite large scale disasters in many places. And I have the feeling that now also the operators of harvesters, I think some of them are actually specialized for international interventions, because that is a very crucial response then. And normally they're all, of course, planned to work on some other jobs, but this ability to get some additional technology and harvesters into the situation, that's very important. So thank you very much. I think these were the questions that were now coming directly from your presentation. I would like to, we have still planned 15 minutes that we have available now before we would break for coffee. And I was a little bit thinking, can we compare the situation in your country, in Slovenia, with maybe the situation in some other cases where also disturbance has had similar regional impacts? And I think that Slovenia, from the outside perspective, I've been there only once, looking at the storm damaged areas a couple of years after the event. But I think in many parts of Slovenia, your forestry is famous for uneven-aged forests. So you have probably quite a rich forest structure in many of the forests. And I would assume that this also helps to have a stronger part of the natural regeneration. As you stressed, you have 95% of the restoration is based on natural means. Mm-hmm. I think that I understand that Slovenia is in a way fortunate that you have a rather resilient forest structure in your country. So I would be keen to hear maybe also from the audience some other voices, some short statements. Could you maybe share in other countries when you had similar situation, and maybe you had not such a diverse structure? I mean, listening to the Slovenian case, you could rely on 95% natural regeneration and only use 5% of planting. How is this in other countries? Could you put in the questions and answers box maybe some numbers from cases from other regions where you had a similar amount of damage, let's say 10 million hectares of 10 million cubic meters of damaged volume? How much do other countries, how much of that will then be restored through planting versus natural regeneration? It would be nice to a little bit reflect on how special Slovenia was in the way that you had this diverse structure there. And while hopefully people formulate some questions, some statements, maybe Damian, you want to comment on this aspect. How important was your diverse forest structure for the restoration?
Yeah, it's quite diverse. We have 70 different tree species living normally in Slovene forests. It's not only spruce and spruce, though we made some mistakes with the spruce in the past. Naturally, it would grow from 8 to 10% of the spruce in Slovene forests, but we have a share of 30% of these tree species in Slovene forests. In the future, we wouldn't like to have so much. Of course, it's a demand from industry to have more spruce than naturally, but I guess we have to limit it to some 20% or so. And betting on more tree species, I guess it's more reasonable to spread the share of troubles. I mean, to different species. Always you have to spread the troubles to more possible ways. I mean, or how to say, it's somehow natural. In Slovenia, we do it already for 70 years. but the same system I've seen also some elsewhere. And the decision how to decide how much to plant and how much to leave to natural regeneration doesn't come not only from everyday's practice, but we had an interesting visit to Bavarian forests a couple of years ago, next to Czech Republic. You have 17, I guess, 1,000 hectares of park where you decided not to do anything. And on the other side, the Czechs have decided to plant. The result after, I don't know, 10, 15 years, the results are almost the same. I mean, you invest extremely lots of money with planting, you risk, did you do it okay or not? I mean, it's many risks coming. Will it be wet enough? Will it come some troubles with deer and things like that? Natural regeneration is, at least for us, much cheaper, much more sure, genetically proved. I mean, of course, at some cases you have to make artificial plantation, but in our case, it's at slope terrains. They're next to some tourist points and things like that, where you need something more urgent, faster.